Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light. In the news this morning, televangelist Jimmy Swaggart has died at age 90. Despite being marred by several scandals, the Pentecostal preacher held evangelistic crusades in more than 40 countries and shared the gospel to hundreds of thousands of people around the world.
And Debra, certainly a lot to be learned from his life and in the hard times and in the recovery in these recent years in old age.
That's for sure.
Well, turning to the weather this morning, during the last 48 hours, the rains came down and the floods came up. This reminder to be a light and go check on your neighbors who may be needing a little help right now. Well, freedom from want is an odd phrase, isn't it? The American dream calls for a successful career, healthy and happy families, and money in the bank and a vacation home. But is the freedom from want more than material success? Our Morning Light panel will tackle this big and difficult question.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. Summer is here, and the warmer weather may motivate you to get outdoors and exercise. Well, we will head out to the Friendship Center YMCA in central Pennsylvania, where we will learn the importance of exercise and pick up a popular sport. Pickleball.
Kind of like mowing the lawn, right? Right. Well, we're counting down to the 249th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence. In effect, separation papers delivered from the American colonies to the British king. And even at our advanced age in 2025, we're still a pretty young and living experiment, testing certain ideals about human equality or the idea that government's power comes from we, the people, that no one is ever born to be a king or a queen. Sorry, Debra.
The princess. In President Franklin Roosevelt's 1941 address to Congress, known as the Four Freedoms speech, FDR unpacks the pursuit of happiness.
The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy, peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world.
The freedom from want, a phrase often misunderstood and fiercely debated since our founding.
Always debated, right? What does it actually mean to be free from want? Well, over the last years, the phrase, the freedom from want, has been used by many to justify massive spending on American social welfare programs. Ideas which seem to come in conflict with what we once called that Puritan work ethic, or even passages in Scripture like, if a man does not work, neither should he eat. So what exactly are Americans entitled to receive? And who is better equipped to deliver this freedom from want? To help us understand these questions, we look to our very gifted Morning Light panel this morning. And welcome, friends. Good to have you back. This is a week where we're actually in Congress debating wants and needs and desires, right? That we're looking at the big, beautiful bill, which is the America's checkbook about to be opened. And the pushback is always, well, we deserve to be in that budget for these reasons, and they don't deserve to have what we have because they didn't work for it, and there's this debate. For rewinding the tape to FDR in 41, this speech given before Pearl Harbor, making the case for us to be in war, these big ideals, and he's saying, here are the ideals that flow from our founding documents. Everything else kind of makes sense. Worship, freedom from fear, freedom of speech, and then we get to this idea of the freedom from want. And it almost sounds like there's never a need that should not be met. How do you interpret the freedom from want?
It's difficult because you have so many critical ideas at the time of our founding, freedom of religion, all those sorts of things that we've talked about, but then you have this idea that we shouldn't experience physical need. It does seem in some ways that that's stepping a little bit into what the Lord can provide. Right. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. There's this idea that we do, as we're building this American experiment, sometimes we long for what only Christ can give us. And so while it's important that we allow people to pursue their personal happiness, the upbuilding of their household, their family in such a way where they can meet not only their material needs, it's also important to recognize your deepest need is not just material. It's something that only Christ can offer.
So even if you, I guess maybe what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, maybe what you're saying is if you got all the stuff that the American dream says you should be entitled to, the happiness is still elusive.
Yeah, I think of Aristotle, who defined the goal of human existence, of philosophy, in terms of good spirits, eudaimonia, just that idea of happiness. Eudaimonia.
Huh.
But good spirits, happiness, that was the older philosophical ideal. The good life, in other words. The good life is more than just having possessions. And if we've gotten off course at all with the American dream, and I think sometimes we as Christians are guilty of this, we tend to equate material prosperity with truly the good life. And the good life is not just material, it's also spiritual. There's certain things that money can't buy.
You really have to have both. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you work in a space where many people might debate human trafficking, some of these big issues that are emerging. What we need is government programs or more money in these areas. But the people that you are dealing with don't just need the helping hand. They need a deep spiritual need, as Alex is saying, filled. How do you see this argument for what we should be free from, freedom from want or freedom from need?
Yeah, like Alex said, it's a difficult question because the government can't solve everything. However, I've been working with women and families, and the situations that they face often aren't of their own making. So that can be a difficult thing for Christians to take in.
Yeah.
Because just like that whole Puritan work ethic that a lot of people will say, well, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get an extra job.
Right.
To be honest, I was kind of raised that way. If I needed resources or money, then I would just take on an extra job rather than maybe take, some social benefit.
Right.
But we can't look at it that way
Right.
because it's not all created equal. And so what I used to love doing with volunteers from churches is walking them through a training that simulated people's experiences. And it was a real drop a penny kind of moment when they realized that so many of the things that these families were facing were not of their own making. And they just really were like, wow, just getting another job is not going to solve this.
I love this drop a penny moment here, because what you really are saying is, if I don't understand how you could have found yourself in these circumstances until you are walking in their shoes and you're hearing, seeing where they live, the relationship with family members, the fact that they don't have anybody up the tree who has a bank account or has lived a life of a two-car garage in a suburban cul-de-sac, right?
Right. And it's also, sometimes relationships are very broken as well. And so it's a breakdown of relationship, but then also the resources. There's so many things working against people. But honestly, to answer your question too, is that it takes more than just financial resources. It also takes people surrounding them.
Yeah.
It takes a healing process. And I feel like when God's in the center of that, then I feel like that gives everyone that breakthrough that's a lot, maybe it's not as fast,
right,
but it's still, he's with them. And they start to recover, they start to feel who they really are, what's their true identity. And from that, I think that whole want, freedom from want, is when we know who we are, who God created us to be, then we can settle into that. And when we start to want things all the time and even obsess over them, it's a lot of times because we've taken our eyes off of who he says we are.
So the freedom from want, maybe we can agree, is a real problem, that there are wants and needs and desires. You look at, FDR used that speech to launch a generation of social welfare programs. You get all the way into the Great Society, you get through the Great Depression, then recover after the World Wars. And we're still now debating where on the needle should government be versus what your organization does in the private sector. So how do we have a compassionate, beating heart in the society, put government in its limits, but not make government cold and ignore problems?
Yeah, even the way that phrase is turned, freedom from want. Freedom for our founders didn't mean license. It meant the liberty to do something in the appropriate way. So we have this idea that, no, we deserve to have all of our needs met. So it does build this culture of entitlement, which we see downstream from the welfare state, right? I think the most important thing for Christians to realize is, despite the way that we've been conditioned by generations of social welfare, the job of mercy ministry is the job of the church. I'm a believer in, safety nets for when every other option is exhausted, family, extended family, neighbors, communities, localities, and of course the church. But for a long time, we've as Christians been able to outsource to the government, to the state, what we're called to do as believers. And we need to draw a separation there and say, this is our job first. It's our responsibility.
But it's going to take more than just 10% or an annual donation to the capital fund for your church, right? It's going to mean you actually putting feet and energy.
It does. I don't know how many people are even doing that much, though, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. So here's what I need to ask. I want to kind of close it down here with this idea. Pastor John Piper talks about how he walks his Minneapolis neighborhood and he sees people who are experiencing homelessness. And he says, what I do is I keep $1 bills in my pocket. And if somebody is asking me for money, he said, I say, first, what's your name? I'm going to give you some money, but I want to use that opportunity to engage in a conversation with you and learn about how I can pray for you and love you and care for you. That's much different than walking by and then coming up with a narrative. And he says, by the way, you're going to get ripped off from people and they're going to use their money the wrong way potentially, but that's not our job to judge that. How do we not walk by the situations we're seeing or say there's a program for that? How do we as believers develop a heart? People watching this saying, I want to feel this way, Michelle, but I don't.
Well, I think that as someone who cares a lot, maybe too much sometimes, it can be overwhelming because there's so many people who need so much. Right. And so one trick that I did for myself is I just went before God in prayer and just said, Lord, you can use me however and wherever you need me to go.
Boy, that sounds like a dangerous prayer.
It is a very dangerous. It's dangerous, it is. It is a dangerous prayer. Send me is a very dangerous prayer, but it's also a very rewarding prayer. Doesn't mean that every day is going to be easy. But what happens is I really try to tune in to God. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'm so caught up in my own problems. And I think this is one of the things that Christians miss. We get so caught up in our own needs or wants or whatever that we walk by people who are ready for that moment of interaction. So I agree with what he said.
Be ready.
Be ready, and then also just listen to your heart. If God prompts you to talk to someone, talk to them and ask them what they need. Don't assume you know what they need.
Don't argue with yourself when you say, no, I shouldn't, yes, I should.
That's right.
Close us down, 30 seconds. How do we develop that heart of Jesus for people in need and not just go by?
Yeah, I love what you just shared, Michelle, that it's that prayer from Isaiah chapter 6, here I am, Lord, send me. Being willing to pray that. That might mean here locally, that might mean abroad to the nations, that might mean in your family. Take care of your household first before doing other things as well, right? But it starts with giving the Lord a blank check with your life.
Wow. Here am I, send me, 5 words. We'll try to be praying that all through this Independence Week. Thank you both very, very much. Well, coming up on Morning Light, summer is officially here. In case you didn't notice, it's a great time to go outdoors, go for a walk, go for a run, go for a swim. Find out how getting fit can just take 30 minutes of activity and can transform your health in our Body and Soul segment. You're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Summer is officially here, a time to be outdoors and engage in physical activities and ultimately improve your overall health. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, less than 5% of adults participate in 30 minutes of exercise each day. More men meet the national standards for exercise compared to women, and adults ages 18 to 34 are the most likely to go to the gym. The National Institutes of Health says regular exercise can reduce the risk of major illnesses by up to 50%, and this includes heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and some types of cancer. We're here at the Friendship YMCA in Central Pennsylvania. Joining me right now is Executive Director Chad Krebs. Thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about the YMCA.
The YMCA really is kind of a movement that's in many, many communities across the United States. So it really is a place where you can come, as a child and all the way up through being a senior. We offer programs for everywhere from those populations in between. So
many people don't realize that this is a Christian organization.
Yes, we were founded on Christian principles back in 1844 in England by George Williams. And that's kind of like carried through the success of the YMCA all the way through coming to the United States in 1851, and then throughout all of our branches that have kind of popped up all over, which we have about 2,700 across the United States nowadays.
Oh my goodness. So why did they, how was this founded? I mean, what was the thought process?
I think it was founded really just as a men's group at the beginning. So, and just to keep guys, young men off the street. So again, Young Men's Christian Association is what it stands for. And it was just a group of guys that met actually very much like the Bible in the upper room and in a factory in England, and then kind of started to have a Bible study and really grow into a community organization.
And it certainly has grown. We can see treadmills, different weightlifting equipment behind us here. So there's really something for everyone.
Absolutely. So we have, again, anybody can come in and get a membership and use the equipment behind us, but we also have classes and programs that all focus on exercise. And exercise, of course, meaning the spirit, mind, and body here at the YMCA. So we like to focus on the fitness in many ways, not just the physical fitness that some other gyms might do.
Why is exercise so important?
Well, exercise is important for everybody's health, whether it be their mental health or their physical health. It helps grow strong bones, strong muscles, helps reduce stress, it helps cognitive ability, just all kinds of things, reduced chronic diseases, things like that. So physical health and mental health are the crux of what we do.
And I know that when my kids were younger, I brought them here, and this is where they learned how to swim. And so there's really something for all ages.
Yes, for sure. Again, like you said, swim lessons. We have youth sports that we do. We also have lots and lots of senior classes. We have a whole healthy living unit that's dedicated to bringing chronic disease prevention classes to all of our branches here in Harrisburg, which we go ahead and train people to do across the state as well. And hopefully eventually across the nation, we really partner with things like that.
And exercising is beneficial in so many ways.
Absolutely. Very beneficial. Again, back to that cardiovascular health, reduced chronic disease, again, for your mental health and your mental fitness, just reduce stress, better sleep, all kinds of things like that.
Chad, thank you so much for inviting us here to the YMCA. It's great to be back.
Absolutely. So anytime I can talk about the Y and bring it to the community, I appreciate you guys coming in and doing this segment with us.
Well, thank you once again.
Absolutely.
And coming up next on Morning Light, we're going to talk about an exercise that is perfect for all ages. Stay with us. We'll be right back. For the third year in a row, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. According to the Sports and Fitness Industry Association, more than 2.3 million people play pickleball. The age group with the most participants is 25 to 34. Welcome back. We continue our Body and Soul segment here at the Friendship YMCA, where pickleball is offered. This sport helps to bring people together of all ages. Joining me right now to talk more about this sport is fitness specialist and personal trainer Kyle Crimmel. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So talk to us about pickleball. Some of our viewers may say, pickleball, what does that involve pickles? What is pickleball?
So pickleball is like, it's a hybrid of tennis, ping pong, and badminton. It's a smaller version of tennis, a larger version of ping pong. It is played using a solid racket or paddle, like I have in my hand here, perforated ball, wiffle ball, and the object of the game is it is a 2 versus 2 game, also can be played 1 versus 1, and you serve the ball over the net. And if the opposing team fails to return the ball, you score a point. And now the point system, that can be based on how long you want your game to be, 7, 11, or 21. But typically played indoors or outdoors. You can do both.
So, and it's not as heavy as a tennis racket or a tennis ball.
Not as heavy as a tennis racket, correct, and not as heavy as a tennis ball. It is more of like a wiffle ball here.
So what are some of the benefits?
Some of the benefits are, of course, it helps you stay active. You're on your feet, you're moving side to side, working your hips, elevating your heart rate, breaking a sweat, and just very good just for the bones and for the muscles, and just getting out there consistently to play. You can see some health benefits of pickleball. Combining that with things like walking too is a great comparison too.
And you instruct this sport here. Tell us why do you like playing pickleball?
I like it because personally, I do a lot of difficult, like boot camp style workouts or some weight training, and it is a fun outdoor game for me for a little bit of active recovery, even if my muscles are sore, but also to get some cardio and lower body work in. A lot of court coverage, running side to side, and I just really enjoy it. Just also simply just as a game. I just want to play a game, and then the benefit, because I am interested in physical fitness, is I am getting some activity too.
And you do see people of all ages doing this. And why do you think that is?
The popularity is growing, and it is growing, like you mentioned, all ages are playing. I think it's a very fun game that people of all ages are picking up on. And it's not as large of a court as tennis, like I mentioned earlier. So kids have less ground to cover. Older adults that are looking to restore their everyday capabilities of everyday living with physical fitness haven't done a lot of movements or exercise for quite some time. Again, with the surface area of the court, and also having a partner to play with too, less ground to cover. Still good physical activity, but again, less ground to cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about injuries, because we know with sports there's always some type of injuries. How can you prevent them when you're playing this sport?
To help prevent injuries, like beginning any activity, warming up. You want to warm up the body a little bit. Staying hydrated is important too, but warming up the body with some brisk walking, elevating the heart rate, getting the blood flow and the body temperature increased before you begin any kind of physical activity is important. So yes, walking, jumping jacks, doing some body weight squats are important.
Because as far as the injuries would be upper body, ankles, that type of thing?
It's possible anything. Yeah, upper body and lower body. So.
But overall, this is a good sport to learn.
Good sport to learn, absolutely. Great sport to learn, and I really focus on people that have not worked out in a while. Great place to start. And also just to build friendship along the way. As it gets more popular, more people are playing. You get yourself out there to get more active and make some friends while you're playing too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
And stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, many of us spend lots of time in the sunshine during the summer months. So what is the best way to protect yourself from the sun's beams? Well, our Morning Light medical contributor has some advice. Plus, don't forget to stay hydrated. Learn the risks of not drinking enough water. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts. And I have the pickleball racket ready for the serve.
I'm ready.
Ooh!
Happy Independence Day. That's right. Today, July 2nd, not the 4th, 1776, is recorded in history as the day of the actual vote in the Continental Congress, with the New York delegation waiting for instructions from back home that didn't come in time. The resolution for American independence passed. The vote, 12 colonies in favor and 1 abstention. In a letter to his wife, Abigail, Delegate John Adams offers another window into that day. He said, "I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure it will cost us to maintain this declaration, but that the end is more than worth all the means." War claimed almost 7,000 combat-related deaths in the Revolutionary War, at least another 17,000 more from disease and starvation and imprisonment. The founders and their wives, and often their children, knew war could very well cost everything, and for some it did. On most days, it was the only promise of independence and faith in God's perfect plan that sustained them. It's an extraordinary legacy that you and I have the privilege of every day renewing and protecting. Think about that this Independence Day week. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to go check on your neighbors, especially today. We'll see you again tomorrow morning, and drink water.